Hey fellow innovators, what's poppin'? Welcome to the first episode of Nathan's Innovations. I'm Nathan, and you are excited, I hope. Okay, after that terrible joke, let's get right into it. So let me ask you a question. You know the speakers with the lights on them that change with the music? Have you ever wanted one? Because yeah, me too. Were you too cheap to go buy one? Because yeah, me too. Look at that, we have so much in common. Well, what if I told you you could make your own version of one? That's right. All you need is a crappy speaker you found on the side of the road, a microcontroller, some LEDs, and some basic engineering knowledge. Basically what's going to happen is that this microcontroller is going to do a Fourier transform to determine how to change the LEDs. But Nathan, you ask, what's a Fourier transform? Good question. Well, a Fourier transform is basically something that takes a function from the time domain to the frequency domain. But what does that mean? Another good question, look at you. Basically, it means that instead of telling you how a function changes with time, it tells you what frequencies that function is made up of. But why do I need to know what frequencies make up the signal? Well, if you listen to music, you'll notice that the beat is often kept by drums and things like that, and that's because they're the lower frequency noises. They're the things you hear that remind you of the beat. They're that boom, boom, boom you hear in the music. So I need to know when those lower frequency sounds happen, and that's when I'm going to change the lights. Pretty simple, right? But Nathan, how does the Fourier transform tell you what frequencies there are? Is it magic? Well, no, but we could go on asking questions all day, so maybe I'll make another video about this. So, with that said, let's jump into the code. Okay, so what I plan on doing first is programming the hardware of the board so that I get the analog to digital converters working properly to sample the signal. Then I'll work on the timer so that I can work on... Then it's going to be the timer so that I know when to sample the signal at a set frequency. And then I'm going to work on the Fourier transform library, and then finally I can work with the lights. Alright, so let's get coding. I'm in. Damn it! This low-level board can't drive these high-speed LEDs. The problem is that these LEDs data signal need these narrow pulses of only a couple nanoseconds. That means that this board's frequency needs to be really high, and it's just not high enough for it to accommodate that. Maybe there's something I could rig up in a few weeks, but that's just too much time, too much work, and frankly, you guys and this video are not worth it. I'm sorry. I guess the life lesson here is when things get too hard, you gotta move on to something easier. And that's why this video is sponsored by Arduino. I'm just kidding, I don't have enough subs for that.
Okay, so I finally finished the Fourier transform code, and it works pretty well, so I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to be outputting a 500 Hz wave into my circuit here, and my Arduino is going to be reading it and then displaying what dominant frequency it reads onto the serial monitor. So if we take a look, 503.91, which is pretty close. Now, if we change that to 167 Hz, 164. Again, it's pretty close. It should be accurate to within 12 Hz, and that's just because of the frequency I'm sampling at and the number of samples that I'm taking with each Fourier transform. But as you can see, it's pretty accurate.
You know, I just realized something. The Fourier transform will spit out garbage if it's trying to measure a higher frequency that it can't handle. So I need to get rid of those higher frequencies. And what I was thinking was I could build a higher order low pass filter out of a bunch of resistors and capacitors. But if I'm filtering out those higher audible frequencies, then what's the point of my Fourier transform? I mean, I'm not looking at the specific frequencies of everything anyway. I'm not looking at exactly what frequency the sound is. All I care about is that it's within a certain range and that the volume changes within that range. But I could physically force my signal to be within that range by adding the filter. I spent over a week working on that Fourier transform, getting it accurate enough and getting it to fit on my damn board. Now, the other thing I'd like on my speaker is volume control. These crappy speakers already have volume control on them, but I'd sort of like my own, just in case I decide to move to another set of speakers, and it's just good experience anyway. So let's get started on that. So my basic plan for this volume control circuit is an amplifier with variable gain, and to do that, I'm using this circuit here. If you want more information about it, you can just look it up online. Inverting op amp. I don't have enough time to explain this video, and if I did, this video would be very boring, so do something for yourself for once. Alright, let's get working. Alright, here's the finished circuit. Basically what happens is that an audio signal will come in through this jack, go in through some magic circuitry, and then come out the other end, but louder. It's sort of like when you eat something really spicy, and then it comes out the other end, but way more intense. I'm supplying a 500 Hz sine wave. That's what the input looks like. You can see it's a pretty small sine wave. And the output is significantly bigger. And you can change that size. That's louder. And then we can go softer until it's basically non-existent. Alright, so I'm finally done. I ended up scrapping most of my code, and after making that higher order low-pass filter I told you about before, it ended up amplifying some of the noise that was on my power rails for some reason. And so I just decided, you know what, screw it. And I just got rid of it. And it seems to work pretty well. So let's take a look. But before we do, I want to explain a little bit. So it listens for large changes in volume. So that's why I'm going to be playing drums, because you have sudden spikes in volume. And so this speaker will work best with songs that have a lot of drums in them, and then it'll track the drums. Other songs which have little to no drums, it'll still work, but maybe not as well. Alright. So let's turn on the speaker. Test it out. Alright, so as you can see, it works pretty well. The only issues are that sometimes it misses a beat here or there, or that the lights seem to cause a lot of noise on the power rails, which can be heard through the speakers. That's not great, but it's not a big enough issue for me to worry about. I've spent 3 weeks on this video, and I am done. I'm pretty satisfied. I hope you're satisfied, and if you're not, well, too bad. Alright, well that brings us to the end of the very first episode of Nathan's Innovations. I really hoped you liked it. If you did, well, like it. And also be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell. God, I've become a YouTuber. What is my life? Okay, bye!